Welcome to UO Today. I'm Paul Pepis, Director of the Oregon Humanities Center. My guest today is artist Squeak Carnwath. She's an Emerita Professor of Art at the University of California, Berkeley. A selection of Carnwath's works on paper are on exhibit at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum. She gave a talk at the UO on February 11, 2016, as part of the Department of Art's Visiting Artists Lecture Series. Every Day is Not the Same. Squeak Carnwath's Prints and Papers is on view at the museum through April 10th, 2016. Thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
You've called yourself a painting chauvinist. What is that, and why are you one?
Because I believe painting is the queen of the arts. I think that it's a philosophical enterprise because it's not a real thing. It's something that appears real, either in people's heads or in something that they recognize, but it's only a thin film of paint, of dirt with a binder. And that's why I call it the queen of the arts.
Queen of the arts.
Because sculpture, you know, like, was it Ad Reinhardt who said you bump into it when you're looking at paintings? And the thing about sculpture is it displaces space like a glass of water or something. And painting doesn't do that. It has to get into your head for it to be believable. And so for me, I think it's more challenging.
You've included in a number of your paintings during your career the phrase, painting is no ordinary object.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of object is it, painting?
The one I just said.
Okay, on to the next question. One of the things that's striking about the work is you include frequently language in the work. Mm-hmm. Why is that important for you?
I was told, a lot of times when I'm told I can't do something, I want to do it. So I was told you never can write in a painting, and when I would do preparatory drawings or like little sketches or notes to myself about what I wanted to make, I would always have notes, you know, language. And I liked the way that looked, and I also like, then I sort of got more formal with it, and I started doing drawings which were preparatory drawings or documents of the history of building things. I was building three-dimensional things. And so I would do drawing as a reward because the building of 3D things is so kind of arduous. And it's not as fun as painting. It's not as quick as painting or drawing. And so the drawings were a reward, and then I would write in on the drawings what I was going to do the next day with the sculpture I was building. It wasn't really sculpture, it was very low to the ground and sort of like fallen paintings. But, and it was clay and wood and plaster and stuff. And then it got more formal, and I like the way language is not fixed. We think it's fixed, but if you like look up in the dictionary the history of a word, you'll see it's had a lot of different meanings, and the meanings change with time. So and also the way some of us read. Like some of us read a little more dyslexic, mm-hmm. or like malapropisms and that kind of thing. And I like that play of language and strictly visual, or language and color, and also I love my Son of Sam scrawl. And I failed penmanship, and anyhow, I really like the way my handwriting looks, which is kind of cranky looking, and I feel like also it's a kind of fingerprint or DNA that's left on the painting. And it's not meant, I don't care whether people read everything, but I think of painting as the embodiment of thinking, and that the language adds to that. And I believe that we all think in language, that we don't necessarily think visually, at least I don't, which is interesting since I'm an artist. But it's how to make our invisible visible, and it's tricky. So language adds to that for me.
You mentioned that when you started to do this, you were actually literally writing on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you look at your works, they look like, the paintings look like collages, but they're not collages. And you do this trompe l'oeil thing where it will look like there's a piece of loose leaf paper that's been tacked to the surface with writing on it.
Right.
But that's not what's there. You
No.
paint that. So
It's all oil paint.
so why is that trompe-l'oeil effect important? Why is that something? Why do you want us to?
It's part of, I really believe in the craft of painting and probably the craft of making things. And I think there's, for a lot of reasons, there's a lot of things that are not made with care, or I'm labor intensive. I love labor. And one of the things I love about labor is how it gets your mind thinking, and where it takes you, and the kinds of leaps and jumps that you can make, because your head is just going with this. Well, painting's very repetitive. You're going like this a lot. So it's partly tied to the labor, and also because people don't paint anymore. And I feel that part of my job is to preserve it. And I feel like, this is a wild thing to say, but I do say it, I feel like I could paint like Rembrandt, but that's not contemporary. So I want to do something that utilizes those kinds of tools and skills and have it be of my moment. So that's why it's important to me.
The paintings also frequently use graphs, charts, categorization, elements, the appearance of scientific discourse or scientific. What's that about? Why?
Oh, I want them to look smart. Because that was not how I felt in school. So I'm compensating. And they're all wrong, by the way. Like the painting, I did a whole bunch of paintings which were really about political correctness, which were the color paintings. And the idea that there are black birds and white birds and blue birds and red birds, and so, or blue jeans and green jeans, you know, that everything really is linked. And so the top half or quadrant of a painting would be the color with a list of things that are green, and then thered be sort of a grid below it, but the grid is crooked, wonky, I can't make a straight line, and then they're numbered, and I lose track of the numbers, and so did you find any mistakes in any that you've ever seen? That happens to be a particularly male thing.
To find the mistakes?
Yes, and I love that. So it's more, I've never had a woman come up to me and say, you know, that number, you repeated that number there, or you jumped from one number to 3 numbers ahead. But all the men that talk to me have told me that.
So another thing that's characteristic is the repetition of certain leitmotifs. So, for example, images of record albums. So there's a bunch of paintings that have images of record albums.
No, just the record.
I mean, the disc itself. Yeah. And but I also know that in your most recent paintings, your engagement with popular music goes beyond the image of the disc itself. So tell us about these newest paintings.
So the records, when I got a CD player, I hung up all my old scratched records like a frieze along where the ceiling meets the wall in a hall of our building. And they've been there for years. And then I couldn't think of something to do, and I'm willing to be available to the most dumb idea. Or just the thing you might, that most, I'm assuming most intelligent people would like go, no, I'm willing, I think that's interesting. So I couldn't figure out what to do, and it was, I think, watching a lot of movies or trying to figure out by just getting as much information into me as I could to figure out where to go next. And I looked up at the ceiling or the wall coming in, walking down the hall, and I went, oh, perfect. And it's a perfect metaphor for life. You only go around once. Some people think it may be twice or 3 times, but we're not really certain. So that's why there's only a side one. And then it just sort of went from that. And then I later on thought, because I'm still using the record image, because I like that round disc. And it's the youth of America are all buying vinyl now. Anyhow, so I also I wanted to make a perfect playlist, and I thought it'd make a great painting. So I'm making these playlists that come with their own iPod shuffle, so that people can play the music in the painting. And there's no end to the kinds of combinations I can have. Like I'm doing one now that's boys.
The one in the show that I saw was girls.
Girls.
I remember that one.
And that's all singers, female singers, and their songs. And the only way to find out who sang which version of it is to listen to the iPod Shuffle or get the playlist. And the same as, and I go from current to like 13-year-old pop stuff, you know, like Taylor Swift, to like Nina Simone, to anyhow. And in the men, it'll be like Frank Sinatra, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's newest things of Torch songs is great. Have you heard it? It's really good. It's like all Sinatra kind of songs in his voice. It's actually very good. Anyhow, and it'll have, you know, Michael Jackson, all different kinds. And I did one of all Ray Charles songs. I did a recent one of all Nina Simone songs. So and the other thing about it is that it does this language. There are blocks of color, which in each block of color is a song. And I just did one that's called Baby, of all songs that have baby in it, which is really it's kind of a hysterical painting, because you read down and, baby, don't do this, don't shoot my baby, my baby died. It goes, you know, all the kinds, baby, baby, please. So it's fascinating to me how it kind of makes a poem no matter what way you read it. And in the way that Christian Marclay's, have you seen The Clock? In the way that the clock goes from, you know, 1 minute, each clip is a second of time, and your brain refuses to be confused, and it starts to make total sense. And I love that about, I think that's what I like about language in the painting. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I'm an English prof, so I always try to help people with language.
Okay, that's good. I needed to know that.
So a couple of pieces in the Jordan Schnitzer show include the phrase, "It's the painting that takes care of me."
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that phrase.
If I didn't have that, I would be not here. It's how I interpret the world. It takes care of me. There are some people that do too, but it's not the same, because I feel that all art, for people who make art, that part of their job, or part of the benefit of their job, is the art helps make us the humans that we are. And it's like a constant. I mean, in life, I think people get better and, well, hopefully better and better at what there's something evolutionary about our life track, and art facilitates that. And so that's why.
Say a little bit about the works that are in the JSMA. We've been talking about your paintings. These are...
You mean a general thing?
Well, they're prints,
yeah,
right? They're all prints. They're from your entire career, or from a fairly large, I think the earliest is 87, and the most recent is 2011, something
so
like that.
Yeah, so I've been printing longer than that, and I don't print them myself. I mean, I don't have a press. I'm usually invited to someplace, a print shop, and then I work there, and they proof them with me there, and then they print the edition. And what I like about printmaking is that it's a really great way to figure out things, and a lot of what's in my paintings has, from surface to line quality, has come out of printmaking, actually.
You mentioned before that in the center of the gallery there's a vitrine that has some of your crazy papers in there. So there's that has a related role, does it not, the crazy papers?
The crazy papers are what I call my drawings, and they're kind of diaries of the working process, whether it's paintings or prints. And usually when in my studio, next to all my paintings are these pieces of paper which I put up blank, and then while I'm doing something occurs to me, or I hear something on the radio, or I remember something I've read and I write it down because I want to use it in the painting. And so they end up being a diary of future ideas, abandoned ideas, or what color what I mixed as a color, and I might want to know what that is again. Or what color I plan to paint something. So they're more or less the diaries of the paintings, but they look a little wacky. They don't look very skillful, and if you look at some medicalized or medical drawings from certain institutions, they look a lot like that.
So most people don't put their diaries in a vitrine in a museum.
Well, they're not really my diaries. I mean, they are, but I don't see them as personal. Even though there will be personal things in them, I don't keep a diary. Because part of me is very private, but I also feel that part of being an artist is to try to be as generous as you can and still keep yourself intact, not give it away. And so there are things I care about, but they're, to me, well, here's the thing. Students are always worried about, they're a little risk averse, more so now than when I first started teaching. And they worry that somebody's going to know exactly what they were thinking when they painted it. That whatever their secret that they don't want anybody to know is going to be revealed. And I tell them it's never revealed. No one can really know, no matter how clearly you write it or how clearly you paint it, because everybody comes with their own story, and they're going to think it's their secret, and that when they talk about it, it will be what they're revealing about themselves, not what you revealed. You're a conduit for that, but that's what makes it universal. So, you know, it's like that. I believe that. And so I follow that practice.
So you just mentioned in passing a sense of a change in your students. You've been a professor of art for many years. You've taught many, many students.
Yep.
What have you seen in the trajectory of your students over the years?
I've seen them care much more about grades, much more about not be as inventive, much more risk averse, in part probably because they're going into debt paying for school. And I think the suits have taken over and promised the parents that this is like vocational school, not humanities, not an education. And I don't believe that we as professors are here to train. I think training is for dogs and cats. And I think that our job is to educate and get people to think and take risks and realize that there's safety in taking a risk by making things, by writing, art, whatever, you know, or by inventing something. I mean, how many Einsteins are we going to have?
I couldn't agree more. Tell us about is there a relationship between your teaching and your art making? Have you learned things in the classroom that you've brought into your work, or do you see those as?
I sort of see them as separate. I don't even show my students my work, and a lot of times they don't know about it, which is great, because it can't. You know, I don't want them. There are a lot of people who teach people to paint like they do or make work like they do, which is one way to learn. It's not necessarily a bad way. I don't want that. I have a problem with usurpation, so I don't want to teach people how to do what I'm doing. I want to give them the skills to do what they want to do. And I'm I'm interested in them failing and figuring things out so that they can make their own work. Like students often ask me, how do you get the pencil mark, on the piece of paper? And I say, well, it's oil paint. And they say, I know how you do it. And I say, how do I do it? And they tell me. I say, nope. You come to me and tell me, and I'll tell you if you're right. No one's gotten it right. But they want to know the way I do it. And the way I do it is I went and I looked at Peto and Harnett, and I just went, I wonder if it's this way. And I kept trying, and I figured something out. But I figured out, I don't know if the way I do it is the way they did it at all. I have no idea. And I tell students that's how they should figure things out. They shouldn't be, everything's not a formula.
They have to experiment. They have to go look and try.
Yeah, and get this close. Yeah.
You just mentioned 2 artists in passing. Are there other artists that have been influential for you?
Oh, I have a huge list.
Well, tell me just a couple.
Oh God, let's see.
Well, how about who are you looking at these days?
Who am I looking at right now? Well, there was that Picasso show was pretty great, the sculpture show.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Gauguin show last year was really great at the same place.
Do you find yourself drawn to these canonical figures?
That and contemporary painters.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really like Tom Noskowski's work. I like, oh geez, now I'm going to blank him out. Jonathan Lasker has a show up I wish I had been able to see that was up in Chelsea. I like a former student of mine, Kathy Butterly. I love her ceramics. I think of her as a painter.
So you mentioned before the sort of, I can't remember that Susie Gablick book, what's it called, This Painting Dead or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned, this sense of the neglect for painters.
Mm-hmm.
And why? What's going on with that? Why do you think this?
Well, look at the size of photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first saw Gursky, I thought, God, I can't stand this, because can't they get a better digital file? It was so chattery, and I could see the little, now, computers are better and people can knit stuff to better on Photoshop or whatever it is they use. And now you have huge flatbed printers which will print on anything from glass to canvas to paper to sheetrock to anything, metal. And that's much easier than painting. It's much faster. You can scan stuff in. So I think that there's a lot of things competing with painting,
mm-hmm.
but there's so much bus wrapper stuff going around. There's so many things that are as smooth as a computer screen
mm-hmm.
and a TV screen
mm-hmm.
or a bus wrapper or a billboard, that they don't have the messiness or the eyeball itchiness that something made by hand has. There's something flawed about things made by hand, and it shows more. I think like I use a digital printer for some things, but not for my paintings. They're like an ancillary product or something, because they're really fun. You can make things that really look like they were painted, but aren't. But if you put them next to a painting, you can see the difference. So they're another form of printing for me, or making multiples.
So do you think this sort of...
but I think there's a competition between those things, those big things that are more photo digital based,
mm-hmm.
and actual handmade things. And I also think handmade things get in the way too much psychically.
What do you mean by that?
They come towards you. They like are this.
Cold and distant. I mean, that's what people want.
They want smooth. They don't want anything that's going to interrupt whatever. The phone. They want it to look like the phone. President Obama said, I don't know if I would have, this was on the news today, I don't know if I would have run for office if I had a smartphone when I was running, because he says everybody comes up to him and instead of like shaking his hand, they're going like this with the phone, or with like, doing a selfie or something.
So do you think that paintings bring people back out of that?
I
make
think
them
it could.
engaged?
I think it can, if people are sensitive to it. If they haven't totally smoothed out. I picture this very smooth, no crenellation in the brain. You know, just like a big
The smoothing
bubble.
of the American brain.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the range of scale of your work? You just mentioned that things are so big now.
Small, medium, and large.
Large.
I mean, really teeny
Mm-hmm.
to, like, you know, medium size to really big.
What's the largest painting you've ever done? How large is large?
90 inches by 180 or something. They're big.
I
You
know
know, a couple double beds side by side,
Mhm.
maybe a couple king size. Enough so you can fall into it.
Enough so that you can fall into
Mhm.
it. You said that painting is a philosophical enterprise.
Yeah.
Say a little bit more about that. Philosophical in what way?
Well, anything that, let's see, now I get into trouble if I say anything that's not real is philosophy. Now, I never say, because I don't speak German, but like Wittgenstein, the way that he observed how things, like his, I think it's the trees on color, he just observes and talks about it in the most beautiful way. And that's a real thing, but it's a kind of, it's not a physical thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bump into thing.
Mm-hmm.
And painting is like that. And I think it is about observing how your brain is working, how you're thinking, how you're responding physically, what it feels like, things that we don't really have words for. You know, like if we had a million words for, like people have for snow, then we might know what we're talking about. But we don't have that, at least not in my language, English. And I don't think other languages do either, because if they did, people would be a little clearer about this, how we occupy a body. And they're not clear about that. That's a mystery still.
That's a mystery still.
Yeah.
Well, I think ending on a mystery is a good thing for us. I want to thank you, Squeak, for taking the time to speak with us about your art today.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with artist Squeak Carnwath. She is an emerita professor of art at the University of California, Berkeley. Every Day is Not the Same. Squeak Carnwath's Prints and Papers is on view at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art through April 10th, 2016. Thanks so much for watching.